What's going on, Sunbelt fans? My name is Dominic Rossetto. Welcome into the Sunbelt Syndicate. Today we are previewing Tuesday, December 27th matchup at the Camellia Bowl, which has got 6-6 Georgia Southern Eagles taking on the 6-6 Buffalo Bulls. Both teams kind of struggled down the stretch, both going 2-3 in their last 5. So neither team's coming in red hot here in this matchup. Both teams had one common opponent in Coastal Carolina. Both teams lost to Coastal Carolina as well. Buffalo loses 38-26. Georgia Southern lost to them 34-30. So again, none of those things are, a tell of exactly how this game will go. You don't always know how these things happen, but you think that should be at least somewhat helpful in just one common opponent that both teams played similarly, but both did, again, come away with losses in that game. Jumping into players to keep an eye out for in this one, Kyle Van Treese for Georgia Southern, probably the biggest person to watch in this game. Georgia Southern fans are obviously well aware. Some people otherwise may be as well. But for those of you not up on the up and up, Van Treese transferred and hit the transfer portal and left Buffalo last year to come and play for Georgia Southern. And you can see why. I guess Clay Helton sold him on the fact he was going to be able to throw all over the place, because this year he's thrown for over 3,900 yards. He's 1 yard over that, to be exact, on what he's thrown for the year. The most he's ever thrown for while at Buffalo was 1,861 yards. So whatever Helton sold him worked, and Clay kept to his word and lets this guy throw it all over the field. So he's going to be the most interesting person to keep an eye on for this one. How much does Buffalo defense want to get after a guy that left the program? I don't think there was any ill will toward it, but how much do they want to get after a guy like this, and put him in the ground a few times, even if it's in a joking manner in a little bit. They're definitely going to want to take advantage of that. But again, over almost closing in on 4,000 yards for the season. Probably after this game, he'll be well over that. He's thrown for 25 touchdowns to just 15 interceptions. On the other side of the ball, you've got Snyder, who's only gone for a little over 2,700 yards, just 17 touchdowns to 8 interceptions. So we know who's to favor in the quarterback aspect going into this one. Running the ball, you've got Jalen White for Georgia Southern, over 900 yards on the season, 10 touchdowns. He's going to be the guy who totes the rock when they do run it the most. They obviously will spell him with Green and Arnold a little bit. Arnold came into his own there right at the end of the season, really had a great game against App State there, but Green is kind of their secondary back. He's got 6 touchdowns on the season, so keep an eye out for that tandem, but White's definitely the feature back there. As far as the kicking game goes, no problem trusting Rayner to get it done. Great kicker all season long, so not the only thing he's maybe got to look out for is some really long kicks, but I expect this Georgia Southern team to move the ball pretty well and not have any problems getting him in comfortable field goal range. As far as wide receivers go, this is where they're going to hurt you. Van Treese has got those yardage because he's got so many weapons. So he's got Hood, Burgess, and Singleton as his leading receivers, all over 700 yards. 3 touchdowns for Hood, 7 for Burgess, and just 2 for Singleton. We'll throw Jones in there. He hasn't seen nearly as much of the production, but somehow he's the second leading receiver as far as touchdowns go. He's got 6 on the year. And one more guy to throw in there just to keep an eye on is McAfee at the tight end position. Again, not a lot of production as far as yardage is concerned, but 3 touchdowns, which makes him the third leading receiver as far as touchdowns go tied for the third leading receiver with Hood. So keep an eye out for him near the red zone because that's where they could sneak him out to take advantage of that. Defensively, you've got Watson Trent with over 100 total tackles on the season. But keep an eye out for Ellis on the defensive line. 4.5 sacks, very disruptive there at defensive line position, and should be getting into that Buffalo backfield throughout the day on this game here. As far as defensive backs, I don't think that's a strong suit of the Georgia Southern defense. You don't have anybody that you really have to stay away from. Bride's got 2 interceptions on the year. Birdsong's got 1. Wilson's got 1. These guys can have really great plays, but they're not the most fearsome backfield, even in the Sun Belt. So Buffalo's not going to be afraid to try and test the passing game against them in this bowl game. But we'll see. Like I said, they're still very athletic defensive backfield, and they can get it done when needed. But that has been a soft spot for the defense as far as this season goes. Jumping back over to Buffalo, again, we've already kind of gone over Snyder in the quarterback position. Let's look at the running back position comparatively. I guess they spread it out a little bit more. They've got almost equal carries and yardage in Washington and Cook Jr. at the running back position. Washington with 7 touchdowns on the season, Cook Jr. with 4. They're both just over 600 yards, or Cook's right exactly at 600 yards. Their average per carry is a little bit lesser than what Georgia Southern sees per carry. Both of those backs are under 4.5 yards per carry. So you want to say that they run the ball a little bit more than throwing it because their wide receivers don't have as much production nearly as the Georgia Southern guys do. Only one receiver with over 700 yards. That's Marshall. He does have 8 touchdowns. Williams has 5 with just 643. And then they've got Gassett with 2. And then their 4th leading receiver is actually the running back, Cook Jr. So they're definitely going to throw to him out of the backfield. Something to keep an eye on as a little feature that they like to have. Doesn't have a ton of receptions out of there, but he's the one that's going to be catching passes out of the backfield a little bit more than Washington will. So that's the production as far as offensive goes. As far as the kicking game, we'll jump into that next. Extra point wise, don't have any concerns there. As far as the field goal kicking, not quite as strong, but most of the struggles are similar in the fact that the longer stuff is what gets to McNulty. That's the only place he really struggles. So both kicking games, I think, are pretty equal in this one. If it comes down to a long field goal, both teams may think about going for it on a 4th and short compared to a 50-yard field goal or a 48-yard field goal, something of that sort. Especially in a bowl game, last game of the season, you're probably just going to go ahead and take that chance unless it's to end the half or win the game, maybe kick the field goal and try that long shot. Otherwise, you're probably going to see both teams go for it on 4th and short yardage in those longer kicking situations. As far as defensively, 2 very strong linebackers in Dolick and Patterson, both well over 100 tackles on this season. Dolick also has 4.5 sacks. Patterson just 1.5, but they've also got, again, another defensive lineman who's big on this side as well, also 4.5 sacks for D. Williams on the other side of the ball there for Buffalo. As far as the defensive backfield goes, they've got a safety in Fuqua with 7 interceptions. Definitely want to avoid him, especially with Van Treese's touchdown to interception ratio. He does like to throw it all over the field. He passes for a lot of yards, but he sometimes has that inconsistency and some questionable throws. Got to stay away from Fuqua's side of the field in that regard. But otherwise, other than him, not the strongest defensive backfield that you've seen statistically. These overall numbers for both defenses are somewhat similar, but the linebacker position certainly favors Buffalo in this one. I would say that that's fine in this one for Georgia Southern, actually. That's a good matchup because they don't tend to run the ball as much as they throw it. So if you're getting those linebackers into pass coverage, that's where you could get them in trouble and beat them with the smaller, quicker wide receivers with speed, with those slant routes or just straight downfield looks. So that is one place you could kind of look toward as far as that goes. Some interesting statistics here. We've got Van Treese throwing for over 300 yards for over 6 games. 6 times this season, Van Treese has gone over 300 yards passing. Comparatively, Snyder's gone over 300 yards passing just once. Now, he has come close another time. He was at 297, so he's been close for a second time. But they've only had one wide receiver for Buffalo go over 100 yards all season. And then you've got Georgia Southern on the other side of the ball, who has had 5 games with a receiver over 100 yards, not even the same receiver. So it's going to be harder for this Buffalo defense to cue in on that. Meanwhile, you've got 4 games where the Georgia Southern running backs have gone for over 100 yards. For Buffalo, they had 2 games with a rusher with 100 yards. Both times it was Cook Jr. as well. So something just to keep an eye out for. Oh, I'm sorry. Myers actually went for 110 in that Kent State game. So they've had 3 times when they've had a running back with 100 yards or more. But again, they don't have the passing attack that Georgia Southern does. So what Buffalo is going to want to do is play that more even game. They're going to try and throw it as much as they run it. Hopefully that bodes well for that Georgia Southern defense, because they can be decently strong against that run. Where they struggle a little bit more, again, is that secondary, that pass coverage. Not as good as far as the takeaways are concerned on that side of the ball as Buffalo is. But we'll see how this one turns out. Again, we've had that common opponent. We've had some statistical things, both very similar within their last 5. Both score a lot of points. So that's one thing to watch out for. I don't expect either team to put up less than 24 points in this one. I'm going to favor Georgia Southern just because they have that quick strike offense. They're going to be pulling out the trick plays. I think Helton's going to let these guys have a lot of fun, reward them for a season where it came down to that last game against App State and they beat them to get into the bowl game in general. I think they're going to be out there having a lot of fun, flying around, maybe looking a little bit more like that Western Kentucky offense we saw against South Alabama. And then that shootout they had with Nebraska, those are the types of games that Georgia Southern does well at. So I think that they're going to take this one, but I do think it's going to be close because Buffalo puts up a lot of points, like I said. So I think I'm going to favor Georgia Southern in this one, 31, Buffalo 28. Hopefully it lives up to expectations, and this one comes down to a great game to get us started on the 27th for the bowl day of bowl games. Hopefully enough people get to check this out. Hard for those of us who are back at work on a Tuesday, but should be a good one to watch for, and a lot of fireworks with all the points they may put up on the board. Thanks for listening.